don't you introduce yourself, then I'll introduce myself, and then I'll jump in. How's that sound?
Okay, I'm Kathy Daniels. I'm the IT administrator with Statewide Legal Services in Connecticut, and we put our triage up, almost a year and a half ago at this point. So we have statistics, we've got some experience. In fact, we just went through a new rebuild, or a review of the whole thing, and that's what we're about here.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. I'm Kathleen Caldwell, and I run the websites at Pine Tree Legal Assistance, statewide legal aid organization in Maine. So just as a preliminary, I just want to say, we have built these. We're feeling pretty good about them. We think we did a good job, but as early adapters, I often find Pine Tree in that role. We don't always get it exactly right. We just jump in and say, oh, this will be easy, and then we try something, and then hopefully people will look at that and take what they like and improve upon it and do something better. So I don't think any of these tips that Kathy and I've come up with are, the end-all and be-all for building logic trees, but we are taking the opportunity to just share with you what we learned or think we learned in the process. Also, some of these beginning tips are things that we talked about a little bit on the earlier call. I think we just tried to kind of pull those together, so we'll try to go through them quickly. I'm not sure how many people were on the last call. So, number one, some of you have already written your grants and probably underestimated how long this is going to take you. It's too late for you, but if you're thinking about doing this and you're going to go after a grant, triple your time. To do a good job, really, I think in the long run it's worthwhile, because now we're serving thousands of people online with this triage that we weren't serving before. But the overhead up front was enormous. Also, be sure you talk to people who have already done logic trees, because you can get I don't think you can just cut and paste other people's logic trees, because, and we'll get into some of those details in a minute, but it's good to have samples, just for the reason that I think it's easier than starting with a blank sheet of paper to have other people's ideas, and we relied heavily on logic trees that were put together by other organizations before we started. I think the main, point number 3, I think the main thing that we did, in contrast to the people that went before us, is I think we cut down the steps on the logic trees and really tried to cut to the chase and tried to make them as simple as we could. We had that 5 and 5 rule, that we only have 5 choices on a page at a time, and we only go 5 layers deep, and we don't always max that out, but just because we want people to not lose interest and get to the end. And I think our stats on people who actually completed are very high, and so I feel like that simplification process was good. Kathy?
Okay. Something else that we hadn't mentioned yet is Kathleen and Maine, Connecticut, and Vermont work together. So the logic trees, the building, and the functionality, we actually worked as a team, and it was a remarkable experience to be able to work together and put everybody's ideas together and bounce them around. It was very useful for all of us. One of the things that came out of what we were doing, we discovered number 6, reusable text. For those of you who are, heading into building out your logic trees, it's valuable to be able to have sort of standardized text that you can keep up to date in just one place, yet plug in a lot of other places. And we've already found here in Connecticut, you know, something changes, you've got a little bit of a difference here, you need to change the wording, the hours have changed. It's just quick and easy, it's all in one spot. And I know Massachusetts is the same way. So another tip, and this came up after our conversation at the last meeting, and Joyce included it in this little list of tips, is try to think like a client. We discovered that we would be working with lawyers on putting together the logic trees, and the lawyers really just don't think like clients, and it was so useful to sit with clients and talk about what they were doing and watch the way they were using the logic trees. So it was extremely useful experience. And now we have new stuff to talk about. That was just sort of review. I'm going to let Kathleen start talking again. I'll just scroll down to her.
A lot of these points are in the document that Joyce, or reworded or whatever, from the document that Joyce mentioned before that she's posted.
And Kathleen.
So I think that my main message, aside from those tips that we just gave, is that you really, really have to work with people who are working in these substance areas in the field at the minimum, and ideally you also, you know, work with potential clients and people who aren't lawyers. I think you need both, but at the very minimum, you need to know what's going on the ground in order to take somebody else's logic tree and make it your own and make it work for your program. And I'll just give a couple examples of that. So the first, no, you can go back up, Kathy.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were...
So the first thing is, okay, you're going through and you're talking to all these people, all the stakeholders and everybody who you're going to make referrals to make sure the referrals are accurate and that you're not referring based on bad information, that you really are targeting the referrals in cases where somebody is going to get likely to get help, not just passing them off as the what do they call it, cold handoff or something. You want it to be a warm handoff, as they say. And you may discover that you have holes, you know, and people who have been around legal aid for a long time in your state know where the holes are, and that there are areas that there aren't any really very good referrals, and you don't have either online information or referral sources to send them to. So I think that you don't, in my mind, you don't just skip those. Oh, we don't have anything, so we're not going to talk about it. I think you tell people, you know, maybe you need a will drawn up, and maybe nobody in your state really helps with free wills. So you say, as we did in this top example, sorry, you know, we're not aware of any free legal services to help you. The best we can do for you is the Maine Lawyer Referral Service to, you know, try to get a paid attorney, or it's a referral in our state for a half-an-hour consultation. I think it does this even when we don't have no good referrals exist. I think we do people a service by basically telling them, sorry, this is what there is for you, and giving that to them. In other cases, this is a second example, you may be able to at least, you know, build out something. We discovered that after building our triage, that the fourth or fifth most common person coming onto the site had a criminal charge. And so there really wasn't anything in our state online or offline that was very helpful to them, except obviously we can refer people to free counsel. So I got together with a person who provides free counsel, the Interagency for Criminal Matters agency in our state, and we just drafted up something where we can send those people that give them at least first steps of where they can go, how you go about getting a criminal defense appointment, etc. And it's not, given our restrictions, obviously, we couldn't go much further than that, but at least it gives those people a starting point and somewhere to go. And I'm sure there are other examples in your state where you may discover through building the triage that, gee, you know, we don't really have an answer to this question, and so either we need to admit that to people, or we need to formulate something new that we can offer them. This third point I wanted to make is just another example of what I was talking about before with, you really have to know the territory, and you really need to talk to everybody involved to make sure that you're on target and that you can, and that you're simplifying your tree as much as you can. So here's the small part of our logic tree that addresses foreclosure. So the first thing I did, there are 3 players basically. We're kind of lucky, we're a small state. There are only 3 players, well 4, in Maine that work on foreclosures. We do some closure defense work. Legal aid for the elderly does some, if you're 60 or over. And we work really closely with the Housing Counselor Network in our state, which probably a lot of you do. And then there's a state agency that also fields calls and works, kind of coordinates the housing counselors. So the first thing I did was talk to all of those people and got a very clear idea of what their priorities were and what calls they could take and where they wouldn't be able to help anybody at all. And based on all of that information, we came up with this set of questions, and I think we distilled it down as far as we could. People who are living in their own, still living in their own homes, people who have abandoned their homes, people who have the issue with the second home, and then typically we ended up adding at the end, I have another foreclosure-related problem, so that you aren't leaving people just out of luck if they can't find on the list. You know, you've tried to guess the most typical scenarios, but there are always going to be those cases, right, where somebody has a question that doesn't really do, these statements, I statements aren't doing anything for that person. So we have this catch-all at the end. And then under the first category, we had 3 stages, and often you'll find that it works chronologically like this. The breakdown is chronological. Those people who the bank hasn't contacted me yet, I've received notices from the bank, but not court papers. I've received court papers. And this was important because the first 2 we would send off to the housing counselors, and only the last group we would send to our own intake system. And only those people, subset of people who want to keep their own home, we'd send to our own intake system. This, I don't plan to keep my home, we'd send over to the housing counselors. So basically what drove the logic behind this logic tree for foreclosure was the priorities of the organizations that we were working with and understanding how they screen cases when they get them, and making sure that we were basically kind of doing that first gross level of screening for them. Sometimes it's not really shown so much in this example, but you also will want to add a choice that will send somebody to a really good online resource you have, and you want to make the I statement match the profile of somebody who needs that information. For example, in the food stamp context, we have an I statement that's, I want to know if I would be eligible if I applied, and we have a really good calculator, so we added that I statement to get people to the calculator. So I hope that drives the point home that you can't just sit in a room by yourself and kind of think according to your own set of logic. Or I was a staff attorney. I had my own ideas about how staff attorneys think about things. That doesn't work. You really need to structure it according to what's going on in your arena, so to speak. All right. I probably went on too long, but that's my whole spiel.
And something just to sort of work from what Kathleen was saying, that last question there, I have another foreclosure-related problem. We do end or include some question like that in all of our endpoints in the logic tree, and what we've just recently added for our 3 states is actually a search box at the end. So if they get to the end, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of it here, but if they get to the end and they want to look further or ask something different, they can do it from right there, and that looks like it's going to be a very useful tool. So I'm going to just quickly talk about appearance.
Kathy,
yes.
this is Joyce, and I just am going to ask a question, and we can run over or whatever. No worries. But I was really struck by Kathleen's use of the term "I statement," and it seems like that is that seems to be a very powerful way to get people to identify or for certain circumstances to kind of resonate more powerfully with someone than something else. Do you have, I mean, how did you come about that? I mean, what is that, where's that from? I just think that's a little fascinating. I've never heard that before, and I just thought if you could tell us a little more, that would be cool.
Yeah, you know, partly we got that from Rochelle. Rochelle might want to say something about how they arrived at this, but in the beginning, we played around a little bit with more like question and answer type format, and we got, I can't exactly explain why. Maybe somebody smarter could figure out or play around more with more of a question and answer format, but we got really balled up in that, and it wasn't working very well for us. And this just seemed to fall together better. And maybe if somebody had done more of a question and answer thing before us and sort of led us into a way to easily make that work, we would have used it. But this, early on, we tried both, and this one just seemed to work better. It just seemed to be easier.
Okay, that's cool. I'll follow up with Rochelle.
Kathy, okay.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, Rochelle wasn't on the verbal. Okay.
Okay. I'll just do a quick little thing, because here in Connecticut we're going through sort of a slightly over a year plus review of our logic trees and trimming them down, tightening them up a little bit, reviewing the kind of feedback that we've had because we've been running reports on them. And this is a good example. Here's something, we have a bunch of information about energy assistance. So we have, you know, we tell them to contact the utility company. We tell them that 211 has information. And we also have 3 booklets here. So it's a lot of information, and we started thinking about, you know, how we're presenting it, and, you know, is this kind of a wall of text to them? Even though it's got a lot of white space, we do have a lot of information, and in some instances it feels like too much. So what we started to do, and we're working on it now, is to build kind of prettier pages, more visual, do a more visual presentation. So here's a page that we built out for food stamps. So we went and we grabbed a little graphic from them, and instead of having a page that shows the information from different resources, we put them in as links. So this is actually a piece of reusable text that we could drop in any place where this whole box is reusable text. But it's much more visual, and we thought that that was, a nicer way to present it, because it does come up kind of solid otherwise. So and something else that you're going to want to do is curate as you go through. So even though you may have a lot of good information about eviction, can you throw it all at them at once and just sort of, are you going to overwhelm them with too much information? So we did a lot of looking at what we're putting out there for resources, and we're starting to like the looks of this. We've been trimming back our language, and we're going to see how that's sort of fall together. But this is stuff that's coming after our one-year review, in addition to sort of trimming down. If we have several questions that are taking someone, that are similar, but they're taking someone to the same end result, we've started to combine them so that the options are presented in one simple short question and they take them to the same end result, but it's just less volume that we're throwing at people. So that's what's come out of our, starting to come out of our one-year review, and we're feeling quite good about it, actually.
Hey, Kathy, so this is Joyce again. Sorry, I'm vocal. How are you evaluating this model versus the more text-heavy version? Is it just more people use it, or, I'm just curious, and I love the fact that you actually waited an entire year, because I do think the accumulation of data does take some time, and there is sometimes this desire to tweak stuff before you've really actually seen what people do. So I'm curious, but I'm assuming you have some sort of evaluation comparison between the two different models. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Actually, I don't know. It's more, we're testing at this point, testing, coming back from this kind of thing to see, we can, within the reports in the program, we can track and see where people are going and what their end results are. So we're actually testing at this point with the tweaking that we're doing, and we want to see what the results look like, see if we see a difference. So we actually don't have that information yet. Okay, cool.
One quick thing, this is Kathleen again. I just wanted to mention that Kathy's thing about their one-year review brought up for me is probably an obvious point, but both the beauty of this is that it's very dynamic and always changing. So take a deep breath once you get the darn thing built, because you're going to start changing it right away, because you'll see things that aren't working. Staff will want to change priorities, on and on and on and on. So that's the great thing, is that it's durable and flexible, but there's a lot of overhead going forward, not just in the build.
And we've been working with other agencies and other special interest type groups, and so we'll sit down on a conference call with them and just sort of talk about what they're doing and maybe tweak things. We're using it for community outreach, and people are really getting excited and linking to it from their websites and stuff. So that kind of community outreach is really helpful, and that's starting to show some more contacts in the community. So keeping that up is good.
I'm curious, based on Joyce's question, earlier question about if anybody's trying to build something out with more of a sort of question and answer format that we gave up on. I'd be really curious to see what whether somebody makes more headway with that than we did, and whether it's better. I mean, we're pretty happy with this. We think people are using it and finishing the triage, but still, I haven't totally let go of that idea. I know that, like, on the IRS site, they have a lot of that type of thing. I don't know where all else, but.
I think, this is Rochelle, I think we haven't done this yet, but one thing that I'm thinking about is adding some more question and answers on the, after they've come up with their first set of results. So that, kind of like a cyclical approach, because I'm still, I still think this idea of having a very quick first cut at it is very useful, considering so many people get kind of screened out right from the start. And then, depending on the issue, I'm thinking of adding some little Q&As or some interactive questions to drill down more deeply after they've gotten their first set of results.
Ah, yeah, I like that idea.
Cool. I like that idea too. So are you guys...
Joyce, what are you doing with yourself? When you unmute one and mute the other one, it's so funny. It's like you're two people out there.
Oh,
I'm actually at a conference.
No, Joyce, she's like two people, and then she mutes one and unmutes the other one. It's very funny to watch. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So, Ange, where are we on? I know you're watching time for us. So are we done with the presentation, Kathy and Kathleen, or do folks have other questions?
I'm sure we already went over. I mean, we'd happy to take other questions, but.
If anyone has any questions that they want to ask at this point, they can. We are trying to move on to our second discussion of the call, so but you're still free to ask questions. So does anyone have any question? Everyone is unmuted. All right. Then I'm going to thank you very much, Kathy and Kathleen and Rochelle. That was a great presentation. And it helps me think about a lot of things, and probably did the same for others. I'm going to take back the presenter role, and I'm going to do a quick poll so that I want to know what you want, what topics y'all think we should talk about next month. So just a quick little poll. This is not all the topics that we're ever going to discuss. This is just the poll only lets me put 5 in. So, and from this call, we're learning maybe we can't really cover 2 topics in a call. So maybe we will alternate one call on an expert topic, one call on a sort of expansion topic. So, and one of the options on the poll is also just to tell us what else you want to talk about if it's not in this list here. And Joyce and I are keeping a list of all the things that people have mentioned that they would like to see or hear about. So this is how we're going to figure out what to do next. And another part oh, go ahead.
Are you getting responses? For some reason, mine isn't. When I click on a radio button, I'm not getting anything.
Oh, I am getting some responses, but it took a minute. Maybe
panelists don't vote.
Maybe panelists don't vote.
Sorry. I should have read the instructions.
Just a warning to everyone. We may be calling upon you to do what Kathy and Kathleen bravely did for the first time, but we may be asking others of you to put together little presentations for these calls. So it's just fully participatory. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about was just, let me stop the recording.